The Life, Love, and Leadership podcast is a presentation of Marissa Q. Paine International, Dr. James Paine Speaks, and the Foundation for Successful Marriages with Rare Gem Productions. Learn more at successfulmarriages.org. And here are your hosts, the Dr. and the Mrs. Marissa Q. Paine and Dr. James Paine.
Welcome back to Life, Love, and Leadership with Dr. James and Marissa Q. Paine. I am Marissa Q. Paine.
And I am Dr. James Paine, and we're so excited to have you back with us this week.
We are. So, what's going on in relationship news this week? I wanted to talk a little bit about this show that's on OWN we've been watching, Family or Fiancé. Have you guys seen this show?
Oh, wow. Wow.
So, what do you think about it, babe?
Well, I think this show is it's pretty standard for our time in an era of Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire or The Bachelor or any other of those ilk of shows. This show just kind of fits right in with how marriage views or the culture views marriage.
It's funny that you say that because I really hadn't thought about it. There is this fascination with relationship and marriage to some extent. And it's like an imbalance because the statistics and real life, right? Statistics are saying, first marriage, half of first marriages end in divorce, more than half of second marriages. And a lot of people are choosing or opting not to be married. But then in the media, right, like you said, there's all of these reality shows, Say Yes to the Dress, and, all of these shows that are basically saying the opposite. And again, I think it gives this fantasy of what it means to be in a healthy relationship.
Absolutely.
Kind of that microwave tendency. But if you haven't seen the Family or Fiancé, it comes on the OWN network, and they basically bring a couple, an engaged couple, into a house, and they bring both sides of their family, like 3 or 4 members on each side, to get their blessing to get married. And it's pretty wild. Yeah.
It's pretty wild. Both sides kind of get to decide who they want to bring to the table. And there have been fireworks and
most of the time the family is not in support of the marriage for one reason or another. And their goal is to kind of convince the family that, it makes sense. And sometimes, the couples end up calling the wedding off, or they're like, no, we're going to go on anyway. What fascinates me is, and of course, it's TV, so it's not real life, but it models real life, so I was just thinking how important do you think it is for people to bring family into the discussion of marriage, or how much should that weigh out as you're considering getting married?
That's a great question. I don't necessarily lean heavily toward a group family decision in terms of marriage. I still believe marriage is between two people and that have to live and exist and thrive in that relationship context. So really, I think the priority is just really, really focusing on the two people involved and making sure that they are to a place where they understand the dynamics of their relationship and are ready to take it to that next level.
Yeah, but family can tear up a relationship.
Absolutely.
Depending on the dynamics, like extended family. I mean, I remember, even when we got married, there was some family drama, which we deserved it, right? Because we really were too young. We weren't necessarily ready to get married.
So it's funny you mention that because our families, I liken us to the Hatfields and the McCoys. Just the family feud, if you will.
I have no idea what that means.
You don't know about the Hatfield and McCoy?
No.
Okay. Well, suffice it to say they were feuding families.
Okay.
And so
I just know the fish place. What?
Which is hilarious because I don't know the fish place.
Oh my God.
That's pretty funny. But I just remember your grandpa and my dad and my family, of course, was always on my side and supportive of me, and your family is always on your side and supportive of you. But I think ultimately, and kind of working through that, you and I got to a place where we came together and were able to reconcile and work things through.
Yeah, but that took a while.
Yeah, it
I
took a while. It took
remember
maturity.
I love my, brother-in-law to pieces, but I was like, he wasn't supportive and I didn't want him in my wedding and he was your best man. And we had like serious discussion about this. I'm just like, I don't want him standing in my wedding and he doesn't support our union. I love you, Ken. No disrespect, but but that was a big deal. And then the traditions of our families and figuring out holidays and how we're going to do stuff. Oh my gosh, that was it
was a big deal.
It was a huge deal for several years in the relationship. So I don't think you can dismiss it. I think you got to talk about it because again, depending on the closeness or the level of drama that comes in and how you were raised, it could definitely wreak havoc in a relationship.
I agree. You have to talk about it. It has to be a point of conversation. But I think at the end of the day, just as we did, ultimately it comes down to the two people in the relationship to manage expectations on both sides of the fence and really bring, the relationship into focus and into balance. So
Ooh. That's a whole nother show.
That's a whole nother show, but I think that's the most important thing.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So what's the topic for today?
Well, today we are going to deal with the topic that I think is really prevalent in society. So today's topic is going to be about avoiding the consumer marriage relationship. Avoiding the consumer marriage relationship. It's a big deal. So
consumer
marriage.
What in the world does that mean?
Well, a consumer marriage is one where you really see your spouse or your partner as a provider of marital services and goods.
Ooh.
And you don't necessarily commit to the person or to the relationship. You commit to whatever experience they're creating in the moment.
Oh my gosh.
And so, it works the same way it works with brands. So as long as this brand is serving me, I will be loyal to this brand. But when this brand stops serving me, I'm going to switch over to another brand. So,
ouch.
Yes.
That's deep.
But that's where we are. That's where we are. Because I know you see it. I see it, especially through social media and different aspects. So many of our contemporaries are divorcing, I think, over things that are obviously things that can be worked out.
Serve me. Like you're not serving me anymore. I never really thought about it that way, but that's true. Like having a false sense of what relationship, what covenant relationship really looks like. And the key word I think in that is the commitment, right, to the relationship. I've been paying attention to commitment a lot lately and doing things whether I feel like it or not. Like if I've made the commitment, then I'm going to do it. And I think that's what's important in relationship. Like you're not going to feel like it all the time, but you've made the commitment. And so that drives your behavior. You're not going to serve me. You're not going to meet all of my needs all the time, but I'm committed to the relationship, which is different than this consumerism you're talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I blame Burger King. Burger King was the first organization or one of the first organizations that told us we could have it our way. And then Sprite came along and said, obey your thirst. And those are great components of advice if we're talking about hamburgers and soda. But it's terrible for a marriage relationship. Terrible.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm curious to know what the limit is there, right? So, of course, no, the relationship is not there to serve only you, right? It's there for both of you. But now you hear from women a lot who feel like the woman is the one that often has to be the one that sacrifices and compromises and has to take more flack from their male partner. And it's just like, well, how long am I supposed to deal with this? Or, that kind of thing. So where do you see the balance between, it's consumerism and it's selfish or it's taking advantage of or going too far?
Sure. So to be clear, both partners deserve and should always be treated with love, fairness, and respect, just as a grounding template, if you will. That's critical for the marriage. But I think where we get into the consumerism mindset is really when we put unfair obligations, if you will, and we put our partners in what I call a space of being indebted to us to do something. And so I think part of the magic of having a successful relationship is to have a debt-free expectation. So I don't expect you necessarily as my wife, because it's a gender norm in our nation to get up and cook me, 2 eggs, sausage, bacon, and, hash browns with coffee every morning. I don't expect you to do that. I don't put that debt responsibility on you that you owe me that as my spouse. And I think a lot of couples run into trouble when we put that debt expectation on our spouses, which is one thing that I think is something that causes a problem in relationships.
Yeah, because then you start there's manipulation, right? And what's your motive for doing what you do, right? And there's nothing worse than someone doing a nice gesture, but they're only doing it for what they can get in return or get in exchange, or they're trying to butter you up for something.
Sure.
That's a terrible way to be. Yeah,
but I think that the other leg of that stool is it's important to accept the reality that there may be periods in your relationship where the cost outweigh the benefits. That could very well be possible. And it's something that we understand clearly in terms of raising our kids.
Okay. Tell me, what do you mean by that?
Well, you may be investing more in the relationship than you feel you're getting in terms of a return. Which is something we understand automatically with our kids, but in the terms of intimate partner relationship.
Oh, you mean like I give my kids a bunch and they don't give me nothing back?
Exactly.
Oh,
that's
okay.
Exactly
yeah, I do
what
understand
I mean.
that. You're right.
Nail
you're right.
hit on the head. And so I think part of that.
They say one day they give back. Like I'll keep waiting for this day.
Right.
That, one day they'll appreciate it and it's glorious and all that stuff.
We're waiting together.
I know.
We're waiting together.
Love you, Paine gang.
But I think allowing that same level of space and grace for your partner in the marriage context as well, and not at all allowing for any abuse or misuse or anything of that nature, but definitely understanding that there may be periods where you may feel you're bringing or doing more to aid and assist the relationship than is your partner. Yeah,
that's where the love bank comes in.
That's where the love bank comes in.
Right. So, and I think that makes sense. That again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so there are seasons in relationships. So of course there may be a season, maybe you're going to school at night and working by day or what have you, where you need your partner to kind of chip in a little bit more and they're making more deposits in, but then, and you're taking out withdrawals from the bank. But when semester is over and you're on summer break, then you start, making more deposits so that when the school year starts back up, you've got enough in the bank so that you can make some withdrawals. And so again, it's not tit for tat, but as long as it kind of balances out and you don't let the scale tip too much, then, it's all good.
No, I agree with that. So the focus of a consumer marriage is one that's really kind of grounded in what can I get at a reasonable cost out of this relationship, whereas the focus of a more committed marriage relationship is not about what can I get, but how can we collaborate and what can we build together.
Do you think I don't think necessarily, I could be wrong, and y'all tell us on the comments, do people get married for the wrong reasons? Actually saying that out loud, I can already answer that.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. I think that could be contributing to the divorce rate. So I think one of the things I find is people, the mission at the foundation is to, build lasting love that lasts and to prevent needless divorce. And people are often asking me, well, what does needless divorce mean? I think that it comes to, so prevention, right? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Sure.
But it's just like, when you know that you have done your due diligence and this person, you've made a commitment to someone, and really that the divorce is happening because of poor communication, because of those family dynamics that we talked about.
Stubbornness.
Stuff that you can actually navigate through, but you just don't have the skills to do it.
Or the humility.
Or I was literally, you took the words right out of my mouth, right? The pride and the ego won't allow you to be vulnerable enough to build the intimacy that you need to actually keep going. And most of that is just learned skill. And yes, it requires humility and vulnerability in order to do that. And to some extent, releasing some of that privilege or entitlement.
Yes.
You know, what you owe me this after all I did for you. Like that stuff is going to tear down and get to a place where it's irreconcilable, but it doesn't have to get to that point if you're willing to be vulnerable. And it takes two to tango. I know that for sure. But again, that's a balance thing. You know, it doesn't always have to be like that.
No, not at all. Not at all. So I think the element in the room, our model is based on 7 elements, is commitment. So when you have a strong commitment, you're able to ward off the temptation to exist in a consumer-driven relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's spot on, because basically without commitment, and you're a consumer, when you're done with the product, you just discard it.
Yep.
Right? On to the next thing. It's disposable goods, which is why it's so easy these days for people to just, well, you know, it's not working for me. I'm on to the next thing. And obviously what statistics are showing is that that next thing is going to be the same thing. And you'll need to learn, if you're going to be successful, you're going to have to learn to actually adopt the elements for a successful relationship if you're going to be successful.
Absolutely, because the spirit of consumerism is keeping your options open, whereas the spirit of commitment is kind of putting yourself in a box. I'm committed to this. I'm committed to this relationship. I'm committed to our success and doing what's necessary in context to frame and walk out your commitment.
I love it. All right. So it is time for the fight of the week. So we were getting ready for a big event that I was hosting. Picture the scene. It is like, I don't know, 11:30 at night, the night before the event. And I am working feverishly on some bright idea that I got at the last minute. And I needed copies, duplicate copies, actually. And so I'm old school. So I'm just like, oh, I can just go to Kinko's. I know that's not even their name anymore. FedEx, whatever. FedEx Kinko's, I guess, is the name now. But I asked you were sitting on the couch hanging in there with me like a trooper, probably half asleep.
You completely misread the situation.
What you talking about?
I wasn't necessarily just hanging in there with you. I was working on something.
Oh, I thought you were staying up to be with me. You were working too?
Yes.
You would have been asleep otherwise?
No.
Whatever. Okay, so we were both up burning the midnight oil then. I thought, I'm so disappointed. I just knew you were just staying up to support me.
Well, let me restate.
No, forget it. Now it's too late. Anyway, the story is just getting worse and worse. So I asked you if you could research Kinko's to find a 24-hour one for me, because I needed to go to Kinko's. Mind you, I forgot all about the fact that you can email them now and all of that. I didn't even have to actually go. But in my mind, I was making a midnight run to Kinko's. And you didn't say anything. And so I continued to kind of work. And then I was like, so is that a yes? And you're just like, oh, you were serious?
Yeah, because see, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, she sees me here feverishly working. She knows I have. So she had a big Saturday.
Yes.
I had a huge Sunday.
Yes.
And I'm working on my Sunday. She's working on her Saturday. So I'm like, I know she sees me here working on my Sunday.
This is hilarious. I promise. Didn't even cross my mind.
I know for sure, because you were in your zone for Saturday.
I was in my Saturday.
I'm in my Sunday. And so I'm like, I know she's not serious. I know she didn't really ask me to. Okay. So I'm just going back to work because she's not serious. She can't be serious. But you were serious.
Oh my gosh. So I'm like, I said, so is that a yes? And you're like, oh, you were serious. And I'm like, yes. And I said, why would you ignore me? And you said, I didn't ignore you. I just answered you. And I'm just like, so that begins like the crazy making, because I'm like, you obviously ignored me. You didn't say a word. And now you're trying to say that you did answer me, but that was like after I had the conversation. So now we're into semantics. And
I just want to point out, we have some of the best semantical arguments.
I would not call it best. It's ridiculous. We need a podcast to listen to. It's ridiculous.
They are great arguments. Like, how we stage the arguments is fantastic. Like our verbal judo is amazing.
It's ridiculous.
It is amazing.
It's ridiculous. So this was just another ridiculousness at midnight on stress for both of us because we're both working on big things, which is a terrible formula, right? So anyway, of course, then I started looking up Kinko's on my own. I think my daughter, who's a night bloomer, she's always up, ended up coming into the room. So I tasked her with it. And then I think you ended up placing the call or something like that and got no, maybe I didn't work on it. Maybe you did do it for me because I think you gave me the email address.
There you go. Get the facts straight. So, yes, I made the decision. Okay, how do I resolve this? How do I come down from the mountain and make this right for her? And so I stepped away from my massive Sunday project to serve her. And because her project was due sooner and she needed to go public with what she was doing within the next few hours, literally. And mine, I still had some extension. I was kind of further down the street, I think, and just kind of going over what I needed to do. So I made the decision ultimately to take a pause. It cost me all of 5 to 7 minutes to source Kinko's, get the information needed to move the project along. And
and boom, there it was.
Boom, there it was.
Problem solved. I am so fascinated, though, that I promise I thought you were staying up for me in solidarity. It literally never crossed my mind that you were working on your own project, which, for the record, you could have just said that.
But let me restate. I was staying up just for you.
Whatever. Done. I'm done.
So, kind of my decision making was just kind of framed in, okay, how do I just drop the rope? How do I find a way to serve and really do what I can to help you understanding the nature of the time frame that we're working with and what needs to happen? And so we were at just a point of semantical argument. We were at a summit, and I made a decision instead of having a tug of war, just drop the rope. It won't take. I'm arguing a principle as opposed to being practical in terms of helping her. I can do it. I have the space and grace to do it, but I have a principle in front of me that I'm working on something as well that is equally important, but I have more time than she does. And so the decision was made to not have the tug of war, drop the rope, and serve my wife. So, and serving you was absolutely worth it because it helped resolve your need, and it brought us back to a place of balance.
Yay, balance. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think that what I learned from this is that when we are, in the zone or in our own world, we forget that there are other worlds besides our own, and make assumptions. And I'm sure when I'm in creative mode, forget about it. Like that's all that's happening in my world. And like I said, I thought you were there. As far as I'm concerned, everybody in the house is here to serve me because I got something going on in the morning that is big. And
so you thought we all just sitting around just waiting to be becked and called.
That's it.
These are lies.
That's it. Like, you are my resources at the moment. And so I think that it's important, for us to just keep perspective in those kind of situations and set expectation, which, for the record, I think I did do that. Like I said ahead of time, I was like, Friday, I need you guys. I was like, I just need you to be open and available. We're going to set up, et cetera, et cetera. You remember that? I did try to schedule and set some expectation. It did not go into midnight,
Sure.
In fairness, but I do kind of know how I am when I'm in event mode, and what that would look like. But it's important to not catastrophize and not get so self-centered and self-absorbed that there's other life going on, even when you are in the midst of, heavy planning and creative space yourself. There is still other life going on, and you have to keep that in into perspective.
Absolutely. So I think one of the key takeaways I'd like to encourage folks to do is when you find yourself facing a situation where you have a principled argument, where you're arguing a principle, definitely look for the practical beyond the principle. And if there is actual space and grace to serve your partner and to make a difference in whether or not something goes well for them or it's more challenging and more stressful for them, take the route that serves them. So take the practical route to serve them. And then on the flip side, the counsel would be to also make sure that you're cognizant of other life happening in the room and just being aware of not getting so trapped into your own thought, into your own world, that you miss the moment of what else is happening around you.
I was just going to agree with you. I think arguments on principle literally have no, they're dead on arrival, basically. If the only reason you are making a point is for principle, drop the rope.
Yes.
Just like you said, just drop the rope. Because life is short and the marathon is long. Drop the rope.
Yes. And you can be right in principle and still lose the relationship. And so value the relationship, the practical over the principle.
So scenario of the day.
Scenario of the day.
Yes, the question from the couples.
Oh, call it question. You lose me with scenario.
Oh, God. Okay, so here's the question of the week. It says, Dear Dr. Paine and Marissa, I have been divorced for 10 years and I feel like I am ready to be in relationship again. I definitely want to be married. I'm in my late 40s and it seems like the dating scene has really changed. I feel like I have to do online dating, but I don't even know where to begin. Help.
It's a great question. And it's one that a lot of folks have because there are so many divorces and remarriages happening. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is really making sure first that you are healed from the pain of the former detachment, and assuming that is true, really making sure that you have a keen awareness and understanding of any lessons that you were to take from that experience and why that relationship failed and broke down, so that you don't take those ways of being and behaviors into any new relationship you have. And I think the healing component is so important because you don't want to really measure new potential relationship opportunities against those experiences that didn't work. So you don't want to hold John responsible for what Ted did. So that's why I think healing is so important, and just recognizing kind of what the lessons are there.
Well, she said it's been 10 years. Don't you think you can heal in 10 years? Obviously, she's healed, right?
I wouldn't say obviously. I mean, there are folks, and them, I know them, 70 years old who are still unhealed about something that happened when they were 10. Mm-hmm. So, 10 years, you can't automatically assume that healing is there. That's why I think it's definitely worth stating that be something that is considered. Mm-hmm. As you start considering the dating scene.
Yeah, no, I was obviously joking because I mean we've seen couples, that probably could be her parents that are remarried and still struggling with basic communication and struggling with intimacy because they're holding back, not really wanting to be vulnerable, not having the real conversation. So I definitely think that's good advice. Really is just to, if you haven't, make sure you have done your work, right? To release whatever needs to be released, and to forgive yourself, other people, so that you don't bring so much of that baggage into new relationship. And I love the part about, online dating and just the dating scene. I have enough single friends who are always fussing at me about finding them a man, like I got him in my back pocket or something. But, I know the struggle is real out there for men and women. It's not, everybody, maybe not everybody, but most people would love to have a successful relationship. Sure. Mm-hmm. And I think knowing that, generally speaking, that sense of connection, that people want that, my advice usually is to just, to be yourself as much as possible and try not to, usually, like we say, when you're dating, you're sending your representative. Mm-hmm. But, when you're in your 40s and 50s, it's like, who has the time?
Who has the time? Who has the time?
To be putting on airs, you really want to show up authentically, do the things that you enjoy, right? And be found living fully. And I think that that's the best way for you to connect and to find someone else that you would be connected to. Like, if you're interested in meeting new people, of course, you need to put yourself out there, but you don't want to do it where you're like getting all dressed up and going somewhere where you would never go ordinarily just because you think there's going to be men there or what have you. Just do the stuff that you love to do and be found like enjoying your life. I think that that's what's attractive to people. Mm-hmm. Like attracts like, and, kind of take some of the pressure off and just make a commitment that you are going to be open, so that you're not necessarily shutting people down, but just be found being you as much as possible and being, making yourself available.
I love the idea that you gave about just being yourself.
Yeah.
And I just think about like fruit trees and that sort of thing. They don't advertise. They don't, request that people come over and, partake of what they have. They just manifest themselves. They just be themselves. And there is a natural attraction to what it is that they produce and who they are.
Right.
And so I think just being yourself will attract the right person that fits into that mold of what you need in companionship.
Yeah, I definitely think there's some strategies about online dating, for sure, which is really the same as well. People get hung up on the picture, which, I'm told you should have multiple pictures of you showing the diversity of who you are. And again, you living your life.
And
right?
Your picture should absolutely be like within the last decade. Like, I listen to a lot of people talk about, meeting guys and, he sent his picture when he was 30 and he's like 60 now.
It's so sad. Like, because that's really the element in the room, number one, right? Yes. Self-esteem and self-image. Yep. It's really, really important. Like, if you don't love yourself, if you're not comfortable in your own skin, you cannot show up and be healthy in a relationship with anybody. No. So that's critical. Like, listen, if you got back fat, you got back fat. And it's just like, you might as well know that this is what my back looks like. Nobody's like necessarily advertising that per se, but it's just like, I need you to see that this is who I am. And if that works for you, fantastic. And if it doesn't, fantastic. We moving on because I came to skydive because that's what I like to do.
Absolutely.
And I'm not disappointed because I was coming for that anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, just being yourself. That'll go a long way.
Yeah.
So today we've given some great perspective on consumer relationships, and just flat out, consumer relationships do not work. We bend toward commitment over consumerism all day, every day, and twice on Sundays.
Twice on Sundays.
I
love it. So speaking of consumerism, make sure you are not just consuming life, love, and leadership. Share it with a friend. Subscribe. Leave us your comments. We want to engage with you. Visit the website, successfulmarriages.org, and we are found everywhere you listen to your podcast. We will talk again next week.
All right. Thank you, guys.
This is Life, Love, and Leadership. The Life, Love, and Leadership podcast is a presentation of Marissa Q. Paine International, Dr. James Paine Speaks, and the Foundation for Successful Marriages. Connect with us. Find us and follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more about our guests, show notes, services, events, or to get involved, visit successfulmarriages.org. Life, Love, and Leadership is another positive production of Rare Gem Productions. Thanks for listening.